Howzit here, and welcome to my camera comparison between the newly updated iPhone SE 2022 edition, and I figured I'd put it up against the Pixel 4a. These are a couple of compact and more affordable phones from both Apple and Google, and I figured they're pretty evenly matched in the camera department, so they're pretty much really good, pocketable, compact point-and-shoot smartphone cameras. And so we're going to put them to the test today and see how they differ and if one is clearly better than the other. So let's go ahead and take a look. And they both have a single rear 12 megapixel camera, and the iPhone has a 7 megapixel front camera. The Pixel's front camera is at 8 megapixels. So pretty evenly matched in the hardware department. So it's really going to come down to the image processing that you prefer. So let's take a look at the actual photos and rest of the videos and see which one comes out on top. So here's a rear video test of the iPhone SE 2022 edition and the Pixel 4a. As you can see, they both are recording from the rear-facing cameras. And this is at their max resolutions, which is 4K 60 frames per second on the iPhone and 4K 30 frames per second on the Pixel. And so I'm just going to pan around here and give you a side-by-side view for how these cameras look. And you saw the iPhone adjust for that exposure as I pan up into the sky there. Same thing on the Pixel. So this is how these cameras look here in this particular setting in the park. Let's go ahead and pan over here to the right and we'll test out zoom here. So let's go to about a half-time zoom. There's no specific zoom here on the iPhone. That's generally about 2 times digital zoom. And this is actually 2 times digital on the Pixel. And so let's move into a full zoom there on the iPhone. and you can go to a full 7x zoom on the, or 5x zoom on the Pixel 4a. So that's what max zoom looks like here on each. And we'll back them both out here, and we'll test stabilization here out on the post. So first with the iPhone and away. So pretty fast autofocus here. And let's go ahead and go with the Pixel 4a. Also very snappy autofocus here. So really good autofocus here by both of these cameras. Not the deepest background blur bokeh because of the smaller sensors, but we will test out stabilization as you walk down the stairs and through the path. And it's nice that the iPhone at this price point has 4K 60 fully stabilized. So let's go ahead and try to stress out this stabilization. And we'll pull up here and pan up into the sky so you can see how they handle that really bright afternoon sun. So here's a low light video test between the iPhone SE 2022 edition and the Pixel 4a. So I'm just gonna pan around here to give you a feel for how this main camera looks. It's the only camera on the back, and this is being shot at 4K 30 frames per second on each. So you can see here I'm in a pretty well lit environment. I want to show you what these cameras can do in a fairly optimal lighting situation here. You can see how they do against that skyline and then against that really bright street light. Let's go ahead and pan this way and we'll start walking to test stabilization. So you can see what that looks like in a bit of low light, especially as you walk from that well-lit area to a much more darker area, more difficult lighting situation. So you can compare and contrast how the darker area looks versus the really well-lit area that you just saw and how these cameras handle that. Also pay attention to micro jitters in the stabilization. That tends to happen in low light. And as you're around the corner, it's pretty dark out this way. And the cameras might be trying to brighten it up a little bit, but for the most part, not too much. You might see some noise to pan up into the night sky. At least in the Pixel, the sky's looking a little bit blue or purple. The iPhone's looking a bit more dark. There is some light pollution, so it's not pitch black out here. And as we pan over here this way, it's a bit of a mixed lighting situation. It's a bit darker, but you've got some lights accented off the building. So you can see how these cameras are handling that right now. So there you go. There is a low light test at 4K on both phones. So here's a low light test from the front facing cameras on the iPhone SE 2022 and the Google Pixel 4a, and this is at the max resolution and frame rate on each, which is 1080p 30 frames per second. And as you can see, the iPhone has a bit wider field of view, less cropped than the Pixel. And I'm starting out in my usual testing spot in some pretty good light, so you can see how these cameras do in some fairly optimal light. So you can see the really bright street light behind me right there, and to the left and to the right of me. And let's go ahead and test the stabilization. We'll start walking, and we can move over to a more darker area, a little bit more difficult lighting situation, so we can see how that looks against that really pretty well lit area back there. And then I'm also approaching a water fountain to my right, so we can test out the microphones against the sound of that background noise as well. So we'll move over here and pull up and pan all the way around, so you can see the really bright street lights behind me and how these cameras are faring. And overall, not too bad. We're not blowing them out too badly considering how bright those lights are. And let's just step back over here into this area, which is a bit darker, so you can see what these cameras look here side by side in this kind of a light. And at least in the viewfinder, the picture quality is looking a little bit more dingy, a little bit more muted for whatever reason. At least that's in the viewfinder. Not sure how it's coming across now that it's off the phone. But that's pretty much going to wrap up this camera comparison between the newly updated iPhone SE for 2022 and the Google Pixel 4a. Pretty simple camera systems, single 12 megapixel camera on the rear and a front-facing camera. So it's really going to come down to which image processing did you like. And just a couple of limitations on the iPhone. There is no built-in night mode. I had to use a third-party app called NeuralCam for the night shots. And also, there is no portrait mode for inanimate objects. Portrait mode on the iPhone only works for people, whereas on the Pixel, it'll work on pretty much most objects. Also, for video, iPhone has the advantage because you can actually record 4K 60 from the rear and it's fully stabilized and looks pretty good. So I think those are really my quick thoughts about these two. I think it's just going to come down to which image processing you like in the end outside of those differences. And so let me know in the comments which one you preferred and which one you liked more. Also, if you have any questions or comments about either of these two phones, I'll try to answer what I can. And as always, thanks for watching.